Beautiful. Thank you very much. And so good to be here with you all this afternoon. As Eden just said, my name is Ben and here to speak to you this afternoon and share a little bit of lived experience. But to start with, I want to kick off with a question. I want to get some involvement, a little bit of interaction. Quick and easy question. And the question is this: 26 seagulls, one dies, how many are left? 25? Incorrect. I'll ask it again. 26 seagulls, one dies, how many are left? They all flew away. No, they didn't. 26, incorrect. 27, now we're just making up seagulls. No, it's not 27. How? Not 82. No, 19 is the correct answer. Why is it 19? Yeah, 26 seagulls. No, I didn't. I said 26 seagulls. 26 seagulls. That's tricky. It is tricky. So you can take that home and you can annoy people at the dinner table with that tonight, all right? 26 seagulls, one dies. How many left? The answer is 19. Now, the reason I kick off with that is because that is the last silly question I'm going to ask, and the last silly question allowed today, because there is no such thing as a silly question. And I want to share a quick little story. As you just heard, I've been speaking right around the country, right around the world for the last 10 years. And one of my regular clients, I go down to Geelong Grammar each year and speak to the students down there. And over time, as a person with low vision, I've sort of learnt my way around. I mean, it's like a mini city down there, but I have learnt my way around the facilities and how to get from where my taxi driver, Harry, drops me off to where I speak. And I was wandering through the schoolyard this year, and it was only a couple of months ago, and as I'm wandering through with my cane, I get this tap on the side of my hip. And I sort of looked down to where this tap was coming from. I don't know why I looked down, but I looked down. It's not like I could see anything there, but this little voice popped up at me and said, "Excuse me, why are you walking through my school with a sword?" And now there was that little part of me that thought maybe I'd just roll with it. But then I thought I better not. Now this kid would have been 6 years old, right? And I thought to myself, how would that situation, how would that scenario have played out if we hadn't have been at school? If maybe that little 6-year-old had have been with his parents at the time, seen me walking down the street with my white cane. And then what that little child would have done would be turn to mum and dad and go, "Mum, Dad, why is that man walking down the street with a sword? Shh, 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 don't look, don't embarrass the man. You can't say that, look away." Right? But because there was no parents there, this little kid just had the courage, the confidence to come up and ask that question. So I took that moment to go, you know what? How cool is this, that this kid had no shame, came up and asked that question, and I explained exactly what the white cane's for, finding obstacles, getting around, that my eyes don't work too well, and this kid was fascinated. Just asked question after question after question after question. And all of a sudden he's going, "Can I have a go?" I said, "Yeah, sure, mate, go for it." Gave him the cane, he just pissed off. I can't see him. How am I going to get around? So first piece of advice for all of our cane users, don't give your cane away to a kid that asks. Eventually this teacher said that they saw this kid swinging a cane around the school and ended up coming out going, "Mate, what are you doing?" "Oh, I just met this guy and he gave me a turn and now I'm having a turn," and this kid's walking around with his eyes closed, swinging it here, there and everywhere. And a week later, Geelong Grammar said to me, this little child did not stop talking about that for the rest of the week. It made his week. Now, what was really interesting, I've read a piece of research only this week that up until 6 years old, guess how many questions we ask per day? 400. On average, up until 6 years old, kids ask 400 questions per day. After 6 years old, for the rest of your life, what do you reckon the average is? 24. We go from 400 questions a day to 24. Where's the toilet's the main one. And I think it's really important just to recognise, and I share that story of that little kid, just to remind us all that the best way to learn, the best way to grow, but the best way to also seek support is to have no shame in asking those questions. There is no such thing as a silly question, maybe other than that seagull question. And it was a simple little question that I asked one day when I was at school that led me to my life changing as well. I was up the back of my classroom looking at the diagram. The teacher was up the front drawing on the board, and something didn't seem quite right. I turned to my mate sitting beside me at the time. I said, mate, does that diagram on the board, does that look blurry to you? And my mate, he's sitting there, he's looking at this diagram, and he's going, no, Ben, it's crystal clear. Looks like it always does. What do you mean by blurry? Now, in the room here today, do you know that feeling you get when you look at a really bright light or the sun for a few seconds too long? Then when you look away, it takes that split second to readjust. Everything's a little bit hazy. Are you all just nodding at me? All right, I can't see you nodding. And I know we've got a fair few people who are blind or have low vision. So all of us would appreciate if anyone asks a question, if you do nod at us, just add some noise to the nod. All right, just all I ask is a and that's very helpful. But I'm going to assume by the silence that some of you were nodding. Is that correct? Yeah. All right. Who just nodded and said yes? Yeah, great. So that's similar to what it was like. And I just had that gut instinct that something wasn't quite right. Couldn't put my finger on exactly what it was. As you do when you're growing up, faced with a problem, not sure exactly what to do, you turn to people that you trust for advice. And I did that. I turned to my dad at the time. I said, Dad, this is what's going on. I can see everything fine, but it's not quite right. What do you think I should do? And typical Dad, he said, look, well, mate, don't worry about it. We'll just wait and see what happens, eh? That was Dad's advice. And in hindsight, that's probably exactly why I turned to Dad. I knew he was going to stay cool, calm and collected and not make it a bigger deal than it needed to be. I trusted in his judgment, went about the rest of my day. Only problem was, without me knowing, my dad, he then rang my mum. Exactly. To tell her. Now, don't get me wrong, love my mum, but mum, dad, they handle situations quite differently sometimes. So you can only imagine how this phone call goes down, can't you? When dad's going, oh, yeah, look, I've spoken to Ben. Everything he's seen is a little bit blurry. It's under control. Told him not to worry about it. I don't know how that phone call ended up. All I know is what happened next. And that was me at school minding my own business. When the announcement comes over the entire school, Ben, please come to the office with your school bag. So I'm pumped, right? I never got to leave school early. I get there. Dad's there. He's already signed me up. I'm going, Dad, where are we going? What's the plan? What's happening? He goes, mate, stop. I'm in trouble from your mother. Apparently, I gave bad advice. She's in charge now. She's going to tell us what to do, where to go, get in the car. And, mate, if you know what's good for us, we're just going to do as we're told. I said, okay. So we ended up an hour later at the Eye and Ear Hospital in Melbourne. We get a whole heap of different tests done. Eventually, got the diagnosis that I had an inflammation of the optic nerve. Very common, easy fix, keep you in overnight. We'll send you home in the morning. So up I went into that hospital bed. Curtains got closed around my hospital bed after mum and dad left. And the nurse said, Ben, it's been a really long day. We'll get you out of here tomorrow. And everything will be all good. As I was unwinding and processing the events of the day, little TV hanging on the curtain rail, it was on, flicked through the channels. I eventually turned that off and then grabbed my phone, messaged some mates, touched base with mum and dad, said, I'll see you in the morning. Put my phone down on the bedside table beside me, closed my eyes, and I tried to get some sleep. The next morning when I woke up and I opened my eyes, I looked for the first thing that a lot of us look for these days, that a lot of us reach for these days when we first wake up. And I looked at the bedside table beside me for my phone, but it was gone. I then looked towards the end of the bed where that TV hung on the curtain rail the night before, and it was gone. And I'm laying in bed thinking, what is still here that I definitely know is still here? My hands, I can feel them, but I couldn't even see them. Overnight, I just lost 98% of my eyesight, just like that. As you can imagine, in shock, so was my family, so were the doctors. So much uncertainty, so much unknown, so many questions with no answers. And as I'm sure a lot of us know in this room, you then go through a lot of testing. Test after test after test, all different types of testing by that point in time. Not just tests looking into your eyes, but blood tests, genetic testing, MRIs, the works. And 2 weeks later, we got sat down and delivered the news by the doctor that I didn't have what they originally thought. What you do have, Ben, however, really sorry to say, is a really rare genetic condition called Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. Now, when I first heard those words, I thought, I can't even repeat those back to this doctor. I've got no idea what it means. But I just sat there. Sat there because my gut was telling me this guy, this doctor, he's going to explain what's going on. And he did. He said, Ben, unfortunately, at this point in time, what you've got is incurable. We can't fix it. So at the moment, the news is you'll be blind for life. Numb, shock, denial, adrenaline. As I said, so many questions. So much was unknown. So much adapting and adjusting was going to be needed just to get through the next day, the next day, and the next day. I'd never even met someone who couldn't see before, and now I was that person. But one of the most important things and the most helpful things I've learned since losing my eyesight is the power of asking questions. Because I had this moment, and I'll share this in this room because I feel like it's probably one of the main rooms that I can share this in and have some people in the audience that'll understand. All right. Let's just throw it out there. What are some of the frustrating things, the obstacles in the physical environment, if you can't see, that just annoy you, that just piss you off? Just yell them out. Well, let's not roll with hands up today. Steps with no handrails, yes. Sticks on the ground. Shadows on the ground. All right, now we're going. Now I've opened a can of worms. What else? People telling you, it's over there. No, there. Oh, no, not that way, this way. Where's this? Where's that? Yeah, I'm with you. All right. All right, I need more of your audiences more often, that's for sure. Feel like we're really on the same page here. Overhanging tree branches. Like for some reason, canes are only on the ground. It's not really socially acceptable to wave them up in the air. What else? Cars parked in driveways, electric cars that you can't hear coming. Wheelie bins, yep. Scooters on the footpath. All right, we can't go all day, people. Just wall up. Out of all those things, add all those things together, chuck people in there as well. I'm not a huge fan of people. Not people in general, but just people on their phones, not watching where they're going. But the thing I hate more than most other things in the entire world are poles. Oh, I hate poles. I hate all type of poles, thick poles, thin poles, tall poles, short poles. I hate them all. I hate the poles the most that are outside every shopping centre these days. They're about yay high. Terrible height for a pole. I don't know if I'm not a great cane user or what, but I'm meant to be able to find poles and I still manage to miss them. Anyway, I wanted just to quickly mention pole number one. I've had encounters with many poles, but pole number one was significant because 2 months I spent in complete and utter denial. I wasn't using a cane. I didn't want people to see me differently, treat me differently, feel sorry for me. I thought this was going to be a symbol of being less than, a burden on. And I was just trying to stumble my way back to some form of normality. And walking into school one day, an environment that I'd been familiar with for the previous 16 years, I ran headfirst into a pole outside the main office along the main thoroughfare. That was pole number one. And it was in that moment that I had a choice to make. Because at the end of the day, none of us in here that have experienced vision loss, whether you're born with it, whether you've acquired it, none of us have any control over that. None of us chose that. And at that moment when I hit this pole, I knew that I had a choice to make. There's plenty of things that we can't control in life. But what we can control is how we choose to respond. I can't control the fact that I lost my eyesight and have Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. And I could choose to focus on that. It's very natural to get consumed by and focus on the things we can't control and can't change. And you can't see them either. Well, I suppose it is hard to focus on them, like physically focus on them. But yeah, you're right. You can't see them either. But from a mental point of view, from a mindset point of view, often we can get caught up focusing on that. The impact that it has, then the feelings associated, the impact on mental health can often be pretty negative as well when we get stuck there. And I knew when I hit that pole, that was the first moment that I realised and recognised that I had a choice to make. I could either choose to work against this or work with it. I could focus on what I couldn't control, but it wasn't going to change anything. Much more beneficial to focus on the things that I could control. How I respond to the situation, what I say, what I do, and the questions that I ask. And for so long, as I said, I didn't want to be seen with a cane. But I think that moment, I also recognised that if I continued to work against this, it was going to be like a ball and chain, always dragging me back. But I could actually choose to work with it and go, this cane, yes, it's a mobility aid at its core, but it's also a sign, a symbol of just something that's a part of my life. Yes, it's a significant part of my life, but there's a difference between it being a significant part and a defining part. And being blind, having low vision doesn't have to define who you are. It can simply just be a part of who you are. No different to the fact that I've got, I should have done this at the start, visual description, brown hair, apparently a few greys now. I beg to differ. I argue with my wife about that, but I'll blame my two beautiful girls on those grey hair and plenty of sleepless nights. But navy blue shirt, bone pants, and brown boots up here in front of you this afternoon. But I think to finish off, quick chat with you all this afternoon. My sort of final words would be this. There's plenty of stuff that we can't control about this situation and the circumstances that we find ourselves in, the connection and the reason that you're all here today. But what you can control is how you respond and the choices that you make. And what we can continually choose to do is surround ourselves with community and stay connected. None of us are in this alone. There's so much power in community, there's so much knowledge in community, and there's so much support within community, and that is right here in the room today. But it's your choice to stay connected, to be a part of that. And it's also your choice to continue to ask those questions, to seek answers, to look for new information. There is no such thing as a silly question. I've already asked the one silly question. That was the seagull question. That little kid showed us at the start that there is no such thing as a silly question. And that's probably the most powerful lesson I've learned, or one of, since losing my eyesight. One Valentine's Day, it took me asking 27 different people, from taxi drivers to people at the supermarket to people at the flower shop, just to cook dinner. 27 different people had to ask for help, but at the end of the day, it was achievable. I could have hesitated. I could have thought, you know what? It's too hard to ask those questions. Too hard to ask a stranger for help. But you're never going to get to that result, that goal, without asking. And we're so much better when we do it together. I'll finish with this quote. A problem shared is a problem halved. And the best way to share a problem or share a barrier, an obstacle, something that you're trying to overcome, is to ask. Once you ask that question, there's now two people working towards an answer, a solution, building a bridge, rather than just you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.